There exists a particular type of person who moves through life largely untouched by one of modern culture's most dominant obsessions. While millions organize their weekends around game schedules and form social bonds through shared sports enthusiasm, these individuals experience something close to bewilderment at the intensity of it all. They're not hostile to sports. They're not positioning themselves as superior. They simply cannot access the emotional frequency on which sports fandom operates. Where others see drama and tribal significance, they see a structured game with inconsequential outcomes. This disconnect isn't philosophical, it's neurological. Watch them at Super Bowl parties. They gravitate toward the kitchen, anywhere the television isn't the focal point. When someone scores and the house erupts, they glance up with polite interest, then return to their conversation, because to them, nothing significant has occurred. Monday mornings at work reveal the pattern clearly. Colleagues gather in animated clusters, dissecting weekend games with startling intensity. These individuals hover at the periphery, contributing nothing, waiting for the conversation to shift to territory where they can authentically participate. They've learned that silence is safer than admitting indifference, because indifference to sports reads as a character flaw requiring explanation. Some hide their disinterest skillfully. They memorize just enough, a team name, a star player, to pass casual inspection. Yeah, that was something, delivered with manufactured enthusiasm to avoid follow-up questions. This performance exhausts them, not because it's difficult, but because it's constant and fundamentally dishonest. What makes this particularly complex is that they struggle to articulate why they don't care. The truth is fundamental. Their brains don't register sports as meaningful stimuli worth sustained attention. This isn't a choice any more than finding certain music beautiful is a choice. Psychologists studying intrinsic motivation have identified that people derive engagement from different reward systems. For some, competition itself activates powerful dopamine responses. Victory feels personal. Defeat stings authentically. The emotional investment generates real neurochemical responses indistinguishable from personal triumph or loss. But for those who don't obsess over sports, this reward system remains dormant. Their dopamine pathways activate for different stimuli: intellectual complexity, creative expression, novel ideas, meaningful conversation, direct personal relevance. A basketball game, no matter how dramatic, fails to cross their neurological threshold for significance. It's not that they're incapable of passion. Their passion has different activation requirements. This often has roots in childhood. Some grew up in households where sports weren't part of the cultural fabric. Others grew up surrounded by sports enthusiasm and spent years trying to feel what everyone else felt, only to discover that genuine interest couldn't be manufactured through exposure or willpower. Many remember the moment of recognizing their difference. Sitting in a room full of people screaming at a screen, experiencing not shared ecstasy, but alien confusion. Being chosen last for teams and feeling not shame, but relief. Watching someone weep genuine tears over a playoff loss and thinking, why does this matter so much? What's crucial to understand is that this indifference doesn't correlate with other traits predictably. Some who don't care about sports are intensely competitive in business or academics. Some are deeply social, forming rich communities around interests unrelated to athletic competition. Some are physically active, enjoying exercise without needing to transform it into contests with winners and losers. The stereotype of the sports-indifferent person as bookish, unathletic, or socially awkward is reductive. Many are charismatic, physically capable, and deeply engaged with life. They simply direct their attention and emotional energy elsewhere, into work that matters to them, creative pursuits, ideas with infinite depth rather than predetermined outcomes. Here's where it becomes both gift and burden. The same mind that cannot generate enthusiasm from manufactured tribal conflict often possesses unusual capacity for sustained focus on complex problems. The same personality that feels alienated at sports bars often thrives where depth is valued over display, where individual contribution matters more than team affiliation. Their refusal to perform interest in things that bore them means they're less susceptible to mass enthusiasm, less likely to adopt opinions because they're popular, more willing to stand apart from collective movements. This protects them from groupthink. It also isolates them from easy belonging. The double edge cuts deep. The same authenticity that prevents them from faking sports enthusiasm makes casual socializing exhausting. So much social interaction is lubricated by shared enthusiasm for things that feel empty to them. The same need for meaning that makes them passionate about their actual interests makes them seem intense to people who bond over lighter, more universal touchstones. They want connection, but they find themselves unable to connect through the channels most people use. They're not antisocial, they're selectively social, drawn to depth, repelled by pretense, exhausted by performance. In relationships, this creates particular challenges. If their partner loves sports, they learn to occupy themselves nearby but not present during games, reading, working, thinking. Some partners accept this. Others experience it as rejection, as if their beloved's inability to care represents a failure of love rather than a difference in wiring. For parents who are passionate fans, having a child who doesn't care can be quietly disappointing. The bonding opportunity they imagined, watching games together, attending matches, sharing team loyalty across generations, simply doesn't materialize. The child is polite, maybe even tries, but the spark never ignites. What the parent experiences as connection, the child experiences as obligation. And so these individuals learn to navigate a world where sports function as linguistic and social currency they don't possess. They become fluent in the language without speaking it natively. They learn to say, "I don't really follow sports," with the right tone, apologetic enough to avoid seeming judgmental, firm enough to avoid follow-up questions. They become skilled at finding the other non-fans in the room, at creating alternative spaces where connection doesn't require shared enthusiasm for entertainment they don't consume. They learn that authenticity matters more than belonging, that it's better to be genuinely themselves with fewer people than to perform a fake version for broader acceptance. The isolation isn't always obvious. They're not excluded or ostracized, but there's a low-grade constant awareness that they're missing references, not sharing emotion, standing slightly outside the circle even when physically present. Loneliness doesn't always mean being alone. It often means being surrounded by people experiencing something you cannot access. What they need isn't conversion to sports fandom. They need permission to stop feeling guilty for not loving what everyone else loves, to stop interpreting their difference as deficiency, to stop performing enthusiasm they don't feel because culture teaches that caring about sports is part of being normal. They find their actual communities, people who bond over what genuinely interests them. These communities are smaller, more dispersed, harder to find, but they exist. The spaces where people dissect ideas with the intensity others bring to game analysis, where collaboration produces something rather than consuming entertainment, where conversations go deep rather than broad. They learn to accept that they'll miss cultural references, that Super Bowl Sunday will always feel like a holiday they don't celebrate, and that is fine. They're not required to participate in every cultural ritual to have meaningful lives. What serves them is recognizing that their indifference signals something else, a hunger for meaning, for relevance, for activities that engage their actual values. They're not lacking passion, they're passionate about different things, things that may be less universally accessible, less socially convenient, but no less valid. What doesn't serve them is people insisting, "You just haven't found your team yet," or Everyone likes some sport. They've tried. The fundamental disconnect remains, not because they're closed-minded, but because their brains genuinely don't process sports fandom as meaningful engagement. These individuals carry a particular kind of integrity. Their indifference is not coldness or inadequacy. They're not missing something essential to human experience. They're experiencing connection and meaning through different channels, channels no less profound for being less popular. What culture calls not a sports person is actually someone whose meaning-making system requires different inputs, someone whose passion is reserved for things that feel consequential to them, not to culture. Someone who bonds through shared vulnerability, intellectual exchange, creative collaboration, or quiet presence rather than collective consumption of athletic performance. They don't need to become someone else. They need space to be exactly who they are without apologizing for what doesn't interest them. They need people who don't interpret their sports indifference as personality deficiency. And perhaps, slowly, they discover that their difference is not isolation, but selection. That by refusing to pretend, they create space for authentic connection with people who appreciate what they actually bring. That the loneliness they felt in sports-obsessed spaces is not their failure to belong, but their unwillingness to belong inauthentically. The stadium will always be full of people who find meaning there. Those who don't share it are not deficient for their absence. Their passion lives elsewhere, in quieter places, deeper questions, connections that don't require watching strangers compete over inconsequential outcomes. They are not deficient, they are oriented toward different forms of meaning, and in a world that mistakes shared enthusiasm for genuine connection, perhaps the most honest thing they can do is care deeply about what they actually care about and let the rest go without guilt. Their inability to care about the scoreboard doesn't make them less human, it makes them human in a different way. And that difference, though lonely sometimes, is also their integrity. Thanks for watching. If this gave you real understanding, let me know in the comments. Which part hit hardest?